Once you recognize those negative thought patterns and align them with opposing positive patterns and behaviors, your life will upgrade to 100th degree. It's difficult to do, but over time, it'll become such a habitual practice. There's a cost for negative beliefs and self-sabotage, and that cost is unfulfilled potential. Welcome back to episode 5 of Unbothered, Mastering Self-Improvement. We only have one more episode after this for this first season of the podcast. But before we wrapped up this season, I wanted to make sure that I tackled the subject of self-sabotage because it's something that I'm continuously working through, and it's something that I believe if we all become aware of the habits and the traits that we possess that prevent us from actually walking in the design purpose that we have, then you really find a cheat code to make you succeed, to make you happier, and to make you the best version of yourself. So I'm not going to start us off with a bunch of fluff. I'm going to dive straight in. You know, we like to pair our conversations with beverages. And today I wanted to take out one of the most special bottles that I have. This particular winemaker, Ntsiki Biyela, has the brand Aslina Wines. It's named after her grandmother. And I chose this particular wine because Ntsiki Biyela, who is the winemaker, did not allow her circumstances, her history, her background, her education, anything that she's exposed to, even her self-limiting beliefs, to prevent her from walking in her divine destiny or her divine path. She is the epitome and the perfect example of someone who mastered the art of not self-sabotaging themselves in order to walk into their purpose. I've had the privilege of getting to know Ntsiki over the years through private wine tastings, through just interacting with some of her staff and team, and actually even seeing her within the states, in different states, in Washington, D.C., and even in Houston, Texas. It almost seems like wherever I am, Ntsiki is. And it's really cool because she's an amazing woman, and I've privileged, like I said earlier, to know her and to be able to have her wines. If you know anything about me, when I really love a wine, I buy 3 bottles at least. One for now, one for a little bit later, and one for years to come. I like to save my wines because I remember where I was when I bought the bottle or when I tasted it for the first time, and I like to see how the flavors develop over the years. And it also kind of serves like this time capsule that you can always pick up at any time, and you'll remember the food you were eating, the company you were with, the flavors that have evolved over time. It's an incredible experience. So if you want to be a wine collector, that's exactly how you start. If you have a great bottle of wine at a good dinner, buy that bottle or find it online and order it, and you'll always have that memory in a bottle. So this particular bottle, I have so many memories wrapped up within it, but the best memory that comes to mind is when I actually saw her in DC. And she signed the bottle, actually, well, not this particular bottle that I'm using today, but we both have grandmothers or had grandmothers who were shining guiding lights for us and inspirations. And if it weren't for her grandmother, she would not have created this wine. And if it weren't for my grandmother, I wouldn't be here, but I also probably would not be the person that I am today. Actually, I know I wouldn't be the person I am today because even my personality kind of stems from her a little bit. So in honor of Ntsiki, in honor of her grandmother, in honor of my grandmother, and in honor of us all trying to not get in our own ways, we're going to crack open one of the best bottles of wine I've ever had in my life. It's incredibly special to me. It's a 2018 Aslina Umsasane wine. It's a red blend from the Western Cape. You all know the deal. It's from South Africa. And so this is one of my favorite wines. It's made up of Cabernet mostly, a little bit of Cabernet Franc, and even a smaller amount of Petit Verdot. And like I said earlier, Ntsiki is a master, and she continues to master self-empowerment and fulfillment. All right, I got my wine, and I'm really excited. This particular blend is quite heavy, but it's amazingly smooth at the same time. But I usually have it with a hefty meal, something really meaty and delicious and juicy. But I'm having it by itself today, so I might get a little sweaty and warm. I also usually have this wine for a special occasion, or I'll take my core of it and have a little pour sample when I'm just being really reflective of my grandmother even. But today, I opened this bottle for you and I to have this amazing conversation because I feel like at this point we've become friends. So I'm really excited to share this drink with you now. It like brings back so many memories every time I drink this particular wine. It's really fruity and plummy, dark fruits, a little bit of dark chocolate. Oh man, this one is special, guys. It really is. I can imagine myself just having like an incredible barbecue, or braai, like I call it in South Africa, or shishinyama, where you just have a bunch of meat over open fire, good company, good wine, on a little bit of a chilly night. And I would be having this on one of the hottest nights where I've been sweating all day, but at the same time, it's worth it because, man, special wine for a special conversation and for special guests like you all. All right, now that we got our first taste out of the way, let's dive into today's topic, which is Self-sabotage, the art of getting in our own way. And we do it all the time. So before we get started and before I really dive into definitions and research and statistics, I just want to break down in a very simplistic way what I think of when I think of self-sabotage. Have you ever had someone give you a compliment and your immediate response was to downplay the compliment or not to receive it? You know, to be candid, I did it today. I saw a group of ladies who stopped me and told me that they really love my podcast and listening to it and to not stop and to keep going. And my immediate response was, I'm trying, or, oh my goodness, are you sure? Instead of me just saying thank you, instead of me receiving and accepting what they told me. And what we do with compliments is actually what we end up doing with opportunities in relationships. We don't receive them and accept them, and we end up missing out on things that were designed and destined and predetermined for our lives. In order to prevent us from doing this time and time again, we have to practice self-awareness and also finding accountability. Because without those two things, we will continuously self-sabotage ourselves and we will have missed opportunities, missed relationships, and we will stand on the sidelines of our dreams, our desires, and our passions. It's funny because that underlying feeling of being undeserving could really just be sitting under the radar and you're unaware of why you're unable to receive. In previous weeks, we talked about emotions and how they inform us, but we should not let them control us. It's the same thing for these self-limiting beliefs and these negative undertones and underlying thoughts and beliefs that we have about ourselves. So if you want to go back to listen to emotions before you dive into this episode, I recommend it. But it's a perfect segue into this particular topic of self-sabotage. So one of the reasons why I am kind of obsessed with self-mastery, emotion mastery, and understanding the complexities of the human mind. If you don't know, I have degrees and experience in psychology and clinical social work, life coaching, and even researching, working with a team of researchers, really diving into why we think the way we think, how environment and nature affects the way we think, and some strategies that oftentimes help regardless of the environments that we come from. So in me working with a myriad of people, I've really come to understand and see how self-sabotage is a silent accomplice to missed opportunities and unrealized potential. Regardless of the circumstances, regardless of their socioeconomic status, is something that we all experience. And it's why I want to dive into it today. But I don't just want to define it and have a greater understanding of it. I want us to really walk away with knowing some tools that we can use to better equip ourselves. In revisiting some of that research, an overwhelming majority, I think it was like 85% of people, their self-sabotaging behaviors have really grabbed a hold of them, hindering their personal growth, relationships, and overall success. So there's some urgency for us to really dive into this particular topic and knowing that probably 85% of us are dealing with it right now, including myself. So yes, I'm going to start off with a definition, and I'm going to start off with one from a renowned psychologist, and she defines self-sabotage as the unconscious or conscious act of actively preventing oneself from reaching their goals or realizing their potential. And yes, I know she's a psychologist, but you know me, I'm a writer, and I always have to make my own definitions. So my definition is self-sabotage is the art of holding our own dreams hostage. So for example, it's like locking yourself in a dark room while still complaining why you don't have access to sunlight. It's something we do to ourselves. In our minds, we say we're using it as a protective mechanism, but it's driven by fear or failure of success most of the time. We're wired for comfort and familiarity, so we tend to resist change, even when it's in our best interest. I want to share some examples of when self-sabotage has won in my life, even recent ones. There are so many business ideas that I've sat on for years. Even this podcast, I've been wanting to do it for probably 3 years, I believe it is. I've created this studio. I've bought a countless amount of equipment. I've told people I'm going to do it and not come out with it. My website, laurenfrancisco.com, has said coming soon with this platform that I've been building for years. And one of the reasons as to why I self-sabotage myself, I'm just speaking personally, is because of my ability to really seek perfectionism. Because I really can get caught up in these beliefs that I have. You know, maybe it could be better. So because it could be better, I probably shouldn't release it. I want to have more money. I want to make it bigger. I want to be better. All these different thoughts creep up in my mind, preventing me from putting out into the world what I really want to put out into the world. But why is it that I can't just commit to the idea, the unknown? Why is there this fear of the unknown, and I'll come up with every excuse into the world why I cannot commit? Another example is even just being fit, going to the gym. I had some health things happen in my life, and they're still happening, and I have some surgeries that are coming up soon that have prevented me from being active like I once was. A couple of years ago, I became the fittest version of myself in my adult life, all through just finally committing. But I find myself coming up with excuses. I don't have time. My hair will get messy. All the people who are natural out there, you feel my pain. You don't want to straighten your hair too much. What if it's painful? What if it gets in the way of the things I have to do? What if it doesn't fit into my routine? I can't do it because X, Y, Z. I can't do it because this. I can't do it because of that. Always coming up with reasons as to why I can't do it. Telling myself that I'm unable to, instead of just telling myself I don't want to. Because oftentimes we come up with excuses as to why we can't do the things that we desire, when it really just comes down to the fact that you just don't want to do it. Well, in my case, I just didn't want to do it. So instead of just being real with myself, I came up with reasons that I could justify. But just like how I use self-sabotage to prevent me from putting out my business ideas and my creative ideas into the world, and from going to the gym and being more active, those self-limiting and those self-doubting beliefs didn't come into play, and I did not let them win when it came to other things in my life. One of the most pivotal moments in my life and where I embraced the unknown is when I decided to move to South Africa. I was in private practice in Northern Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C., and I was nailing down job opportunities and had the best mentors and the best opportunities afforded to me. But I wanted to walk out on my own and move to South Africa because I wanted to bring mental health services to a population who didn't have access. And I also wanted to embrace that quest for independence that I've always had. I've always been sort of independent, but at the same time, I wanted to be in a place where I couldn't have a crutch or I couldn't have any fallback plan. And I really had to learn how to navigate systems, navigate work, navigate living on my own. And there's nothing like doing that than when you're in another country. When I decided to embark on those solo travels, self-sabotage, it could have reared its head. I had thoughts of loneliness, I had safety concerns, uncertainties, and I had a cloudy mind sometimes. And I did have the temptation to stay kind of in a comfort zone, but I did not allow that to win. And what's the difference between my thought process then and what's the difference between my thought process now, where I allow self-sabotage to prevent me from living the healthiest version of myself in regards to my body and how I treat it? What happened between when I didn't allow it to win and when I did allow it to win? That's what we're going to talk about for my own life, and that's what we're going to talk about in regards to strategies and ways of thinking for you all. Because the truth is, there are relationships that we could have had, careers we could have stepped into, books we could have written, places we could have traveled, but we thought our way out of it. I've done it, and I'm doing it probably even now. Fear, failure, rejection, and not being able to let go of control are some of the main reasons as to why we allow these self-sabotaging and self-limiting beliefs to take over. There are definitely things that we don't have control over, but we shouldn't let external circumstances become excuses for our inaction. Sometimes we like to blame those external factors. Like constraints or lack of resources, societal pressures, where we come from, the color of our skin, so many different reasons as to why we're unable to check off goals that we have for our lives or to do the things that we desire. And just like how we use external circumstances, we also have this need for control. We're kind of scared of walking into the unknown, and we oftentimes self-sabotage ourselves to shield us from the unknown in these gray areas. We'd rather stay locked away than to risk trying and operating in faith. Limiting beliefs become kind of like this repetitive behavior. We take these negative positions, but although we take those negative positions, we have control over it. Have you ever caught yourself saying like, nothing will ever get better, or I'll never get out of this job, I'll never get out of this town? We're always using the big terms of never or always. And never and always can be some of the biggest blockades. It takes so much energy to remain in a state of negativity, telling yourself that you'll never be able to do something, never be able to accomplish something, never be able to get to a certain level, taking excuses, like I said earlier, using those excuses as the reason why you cannot act. A lot of these beliefs stem from childhood. We sabotage and sabotage until these beliefs come true, but we have to upgrade those limiting beliefs, or they'll be transferred over generation to generation. And until we catch it and do the work to break the cycle, we'll find our children, our friends, our family members adopting that same negative mood state and using it as an excuse as to why they're unable to operate in a spirit of excellence. Even though these negative beliefs can be deeply ingrained and they can inform us about ourselves, we should not allow them to be a reason as to why we will engage in self-destructive behaviors. We have to confront and challenge these limiting beliefs. Breaking the cycle takes extreme effort. It takes intentional effort, and it takes self-awareness. It's the first step towards change. We have to recognize those patterns of self-sabotage and replace them with healthier behaviors. Once you recognize those negative thought patterns and align them with opposing positive patterns and behaviors, your life will upgrade to 100th degree. It's difficult to do, but over time, it'll become such a habitual practice. There's a cost for negative beliefs and self-sabotage, and that cost is unfulfilled potential. So yes, you have a little background on self-sabotage now, but let's talk about some strategies for self-transformation and how we cannot allow this to dictate who and what we'll become. Before we get into the good, let's talk about the bad. I'll just be candid with you. Some of my top bad habits for self-sabotage and igniting it, one of them, and the biggest one, is excessive procrastination. When it comes to some of the ideas that I have for the things that I want to do with my life, I will push the deadline back. And oftentimes when I push the deadline back, it really just prevents me from having to face reality. And one of the main ways that I use procrastination is by filling up my task list with a lot of things so that I can push back the deadline for the major things. So I'll tell myself I have to do a bunch of little things so the big major things in my life can be pushed aside. Another bad habit is negative self-talk. We talked about some examples earlier, but one of the main ones that I do is I'll tell myself, maybe if I had a little bit more money, a little bit more time, a little bit more experience, always downplaying the experience that I have, the education that I have, anything that I currently have in this season. Sometimes I'll tell myself, you could be better, you could do better. And yes, I could be and do better, but I shouldn't downplay who I am today. The third one is perfectionism. Wanting something to be quality or wanting something to be top tier, but all it takes is you putting out something in the world, because it's hard to evolve and get better when there's nothing out for you to even critique or build upon. Another one is even comparison. I'll look at some of my peers and I'm like, man, how did they even do that? They're crushing it. And yes, they're crushing it, but I shouldn't be comparing my product, my ideas, my creativity to theirs. I should be able to compliment them while also still walking in my own path. But some of the good habits that help me fight self-sabotage, let's talk about some of those, because I don't want to just be talking about the bad habits. The number one thing for me has been vision journaling. And when I say vision journaling, that's me writing down where I want to be, who I want to become, and the things that I want to possess. There's something about writing it down and seeing it for yourself. So yes, I have these negative ideas that come to mind, but when I write down the positives, when I write down the ideas and the aspirations that I have and I see them, it actually ignites something in me and I end up encouraging myself. Another one is positive affirmations. I actually have a positive affirmation deck that I keep in my bathroom. So every morning when I wake up, there's a deck of cards that I open up and there's a new positive affirmation. And there's also devotion that I do every morning. And the one that I believe every single person can benefit from is setting clear and achievable goals. Because we like to just have these lofty major goals that we put before us, but sometimes we just need to have a simple, clear list of something that we can do with a deadline. Yes, a deadline. All my procrastinators out there, all my creators out there, you need a deadline. So make it clear and make it something that you can actually achieve. It's important to have lofty, large, major goals for 3, 5, 10-year plans. But at the same time, why don't you just have a goal for this week? Make it simple. But the biggest one of all time, and I mean the biggest one of my lifetime, the good habit that helped me fight self-sabotage is accountability. Seeking external advice and feedback. I have coaches, I have therapists, I have colleagues, I have so many people in position that hold me accountable. But the biggest accountability partner that I have is my mother. She's actually a scary one. If I ever tell my mom that I want to do something, I'm like, oh goodness, like I know she's going to be on my tail, but that's a good thing. I work with coaches bi-weekly, still to this day. And even though I don't see my therapist anymore, I know that I could tap back in at any time. And these beautiful ladies in my life hold me accountable in so many different ways, and they're also very encouraging. So if you're out there and you want to fight self-sabotage, accountability and vision journaling and setting clear and achievable goals are my top 3 for sure. Positive affirmations are good and all, but at the end of the day, when you involve other people in your journey, they'll help hold you accountable, and you'll end up evolving at a more rapid rate, because it's not just you keeping yourself in check, and you can't use procrastination. You'll have someone that's stepping into the picture to help show you things from an aerial view. While you're growing, you have to embrace the fact that imperfection and growth can coexist. There's beauty in imperfection, and growth is definitely messy and not linear. You'll be up, you'll be down one season, you'll be back, you'll be forward, you'll be pushed in a bunch of different directions. But if you maintain the idea that you're in a constant state of evolution, growth will always happen. Self-sabotage is a universal experience, but it does not have to define your journey. We can understand its mechanisms, definitions, challenging negative beliefs, and cultivating self-awareness, but you can break free from its grip and pave the way for a more empowered and fulfilling life. Because at the end of the day, guys, we got to reclaim our dreams and aspirations. And in order to reclaim our dreams and aspirations, you have to be able to track your progress. Take note of some of the negative self-talk you have. Take note of the comparisons that you make and dismantle them. And as you're tracking your progress, like I said, it's not linear. You will go up, you will go down. You'll have some seasons in your life where you're like, oof, season's a little rough. But the most important piece is that you're aware of those seasons, and you're aware of how to fight those self-limiting beliefs, and you're aware of how to fight self-sabotage. So I want to leave you with a quote from C.S. Lewis. He said, "You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending." This is a beautiful quote, but you know I'm a writer, and you know I had to rewrite it a little bit. So if I had to simplify and end with something that was enlightening and something that you could ponder upon, it would be that self-sabotage might linger, but it will no longer lead. I'm preaching this to myself. I'm preaching this to you all. And I pray and I hope that you will continue to embrace your imperfections, but more than anything, you will make a promise to yourself that you will grow, you will break cycles, and you will not allow self-sabotage to result in unfulfilled potential. Whether you're a dreamer, a doer, or somewhere in between, self-sabotage is a silent accomplice to missed opportunities and unrealized potential. But don't allow it to get in your way. Don't allow yourself to get in your own way. I'm going to say it again. Break free. Self-sabotage might linger, but it will no longer lead. I love you guys. Thank you for listening. Next week will be the last podcast for this particular season, but I will continue to tap in with you all every week in different creative ways. Let me know what you think about our chat today, and I can't wait to see you all for the last episode of this season of Unbothered Mastering Self-Improvement. See you all next week. Cheers.